We have taken 3 flights with our then 3-month-old baby, so everything I'm going to tell you is based on true experiences, whether they be good or bad. We flew in May 2022 with BA, so make sure you check with your airline and airports to make sure that everything I'm saying is still true when you fly. Some airports and airlines have family check-in and family security. I don't know how I didn't know this, because when you realise it, there are signs everywhere and they are huge. You might be made to check in the family queue, but you may not be. If you can, it just means that you will probably get less queues and also have more time to check in with less stress. You can then go through the family security, which means you can just take so much more time. And the people working there know that you're coming with a family and they're really tolerant of everything, which is amazing. There are fewer queues, but the families are a little bit slower because you know you can take that time, but also because you know you need to. Like, no one wants to stand in a security queue at all. So knowing that you can take a little bit more time is actually a little bit nicer. We always have loads to unpack because we have our laptops for work all of the time, so we have to have multiple of those little baskets that go through. This time my husband went through first, then he got checked that was okay, and then he came back to take the baby, who was currently sleeping on the Beyond Carry that I was wearing, and it was so annoying to have to wake her up because it happened in every single airport. So we had to wake her up. I then got patted down. The baby got patted down, which is ridiculous but also so cute. And then I went, once I'd gone through, she was then put back on me. We had to put everything back in our bags and then go. It's a little bit stressful putting back everything in your bags, but at least the process of getting there was really stress-free. Pack more than you think you need for the baby. Long story short, we got stuck on holiday for 4 days more than we thought, and I never thought that would ever happen. So 4 days longer, which is a lot of baby stuff. And I was so sick, I literally couldn't move. I couldn't leave the bed. It was ridiculous. So I couldn't have gone out and got anything extra for her if I'd needed to. Obviously I had my husband, but he also was looking after the baby, so he could have gone out, but it was a hassle. But if you pack more than you need, then you don't need to worry about it. We met some people in the airport also with screaming babies, but we'll talk about that later, and they had run out of formula because they'd packed everything in their bag that was currently on the plane. Since being in the airport, their flight then got delayed by, I think it was about 8 hours by the time we saw them. Luckily their flight then got called, but they had run out of formula and they didn't really know what to do, and there were no shops open in the airport. There was nothing they could do about it. We didn't know how to help them, but luckily, as I said, that they were then called, so I'm hoping they were okay and they got home okay, but there was literally nothing they could do about it, and it wasn't their fault because they weren't expecting while you're in the airport for it to get delayed that much. So pack more than you think you need. When you fly with a little one under 2, you have the choice of having them on you, so you don't have to buy an extra seat, or they can have their own seat. I believe a certain age has to be in a car seat, so check that out. We decided to have her on us because in the end we didn't want the extra hassle of having a car seat, so she was just on us the whole time. It was really good because it means that we didn't have to pay an extra price for an extra seat, but we still got loads of baggage for her. If they get their own seat, they get everything that they would have had if they were an adult paying for that seat, so they get the same baggage allowance as they would have had. If they get on the seat with you, then they get their own little hand luggage bag, which seems so silly, but you need it. You massively, massively need it. Your child can also have 2 or 4 things put in the hold for free, which is a pushchair, a car seat, a travel cot, or like a back sling that you can carry them on. We chose to take a pushchair. We just chose a pushchair in the end. Top tip from someone traveling with 2 babies and 2 car seats. They put bags over their car seat, so car seat bags, but they crammed their car seat full of baby stuff like nappies, wet wipes, etc. because it's not weighed. So rather than having to put it in their own luggage, they could cram it full and it wasn't taking up space in their own bags. And obviously while you're away, you're going to be using up all that stuff. So my theory is you go out with the most amount of stuff and then you come back with much, much less. So as long as you can get everything packed when you leave, when you come back, it's going to be much easier, assuming you haven't bought loads of stuff when you're away, which obviously you might do. The reason we decided not to take a car seat is because we knew everything we needed to do could be done in a normal pushchair without getting in and out of a car, apart from the taxi to and from the airport. So we instead booked taxis in advance with taxi companies that had car seats. And they're fantastic because you can tell them the age of the baby in advance, so you know that you're going to turn up and have a taxi ready and have a car seat appropriate for the age of your baby ready. It's of course more expensive. The usual taxi that we get is usually about €100. I think this one ended up being about €70 more, but it then also meant that we didn't have to buy a seat on the plane there and back, so it definitely worked out cheaper for us. And also, it's just one less thing to have to carry because we had so much to carry, it was ridiculous. So you can either take your car seat and cram it with loads of goodies, or not take a car seat, pay a little bit more for your taxi, but know that you've got a safe ride. So the pushchair we took was the Joy Signature Tourist pushchair. I've got a whole review on it in case you want to check it out. We took that one specifically because it folds down and packs up really, really small and you can get it on an airplane, and it's really light. With your pushchair, you can either take it around the airport with you and leave it at the door for the plane, or you can put it down as part of special baggage and that will get on the conveyor belt separately for you. We did it as special baggage every time. The first time we did it, we had to wait about an hour on the other end for it to come through, which was an absolute nightmare. It was ridiculous. I didn't know if it was going to turn up, and there was someone else there who'd been waiting for his special baggage for, I think, 6 hours. So we did get ours in the end, but we did have to wait. However, with our other 2 flights, it was already there on the carousel waiting for us by the time we got out. Some experiences are really good, some experiences are bad. We decided not to take it around the airport with us because we already had 2 hand luggage suitcases plus the baby. We also then would have had the pushchair, and sometimes she's happy in the pushchair, sometimes she needs a carry, and we just didn't know which one it was going to be. So we thought if we take her on the Bjorn carrier, then at least we would have her on us. It was going to be a bit easier and just one less thing to carry. I'm not sure if that was the right decision. Next time I'll fly, I'll take it to the gate and I'll let you know if that was easier. But for us, special baggage, just bear in mind it might take you a bit longer on the other end to actually get your special baggage. In terms of when to fly, as in times of day, you may or may not have a choice. If you have a choice, try and fit it around you and your baby's routine because that will be so much easier. We had 2 morning flights and actually they were the best flights. I was worried about them, but she was awake and she was happy the whole time and she was looking around and people were talking to her. So it was a really, really easy flight. One of the flights was an evening flight, which was great because she slept the whole time, which was amazing, but she screamed in the airport before we got on the flight because it was delayed. Not, she didn't scream because it was delayed, that would be brilliant if that was the reason, but she screamed because it was bedtime, she needed to be in bed and she wasn't sleeping, and we tried. So that was, the airport was harder, but the sleeping was better. I think if I had the choice, I would definitely do a morning flight because as much as they're awake and need entertaining, babies, which this video is for, don't need that much entertaining, so it hopefully will be easier. I was really worried about her ears. That was my main kind of, that was my main worry about flying. I thought she was going to be in a lot of pain from her ears popping, but I fed her on takeoff. I fed her on landing every single flight, except for the last one, she was asleep. and it worked like a charm. She was really, really happy the whole time. The only difficult thing is knowing sometimes how long the taxi is, because one of the flights I fed her far too soon. We were taxiing towards the runway and then we were waiting on the runway and I thought we were about to take off, so I fed her. Then we were still there for about 5 minutes later and then she came off. And then I tried to feed her when we were taking off because it was much later than I thought it was going to be and it didn't work and she didn't want anything. But luckily she was still fine. So it's a little bit difficult to time, but if you feed them on takeoff and landing, that is the biggest piece of advice I can give you to make it much, much easier for them. In terms of in-flight entertainment, I took these little things and I also took wrist rattles. The wrist rattles were not noisy. Nobody could hear them apart from me. They've got such a tiny, tiny noise that if she did bash them, nobody would have been able to hear it over the airplane noise. So I wasn't being an annoying passenger, please don't worry. But she loved playing with both of them. It was just nice to take her attention away, and she was only 3 months, so she kind of wasn't really doing much, didn't really need much entertainment, but every so often she would kind of try and reach for it and grab it or accidentally bash the wrist rattle. She wasn't intentionally bashing it, she was accidentally bashing it. But that was really nice just to have something that I knew if things got a bit rubbish that I could try and entertain her. When we were on the plane, we also made sure that we packed everything properly in like little bags like this, just so we could grab them and go, and I thank goodness we did, because we had a couple of poo explosions pretty much as soon as we were on the flight, and I got pooed on one flight, my husband got pooed on another flight, and he's 6'6", so he was closest to the toilet, and I made him go and change her in the toilet, which he said was definitely doable, but that space is small enough for him at the best of times, let alone trying to change a baby. So make sure you do have enough clothes for your baby to change into in case they do have a poo explosion, but also something for you in case there is a poo explosion that goes on you, because there is no escaping that when you're on a plane, there is nothing. And they also have little baby seat belts that attach to your seat belts if they're on you, which is so cute, but it literally means they're going to be sitting on you, so if they poo, they're going to poo on you. If you're flying with a baby, there are specific seats that you have to sit in. Because of that, you might find that you're at the very, very front row, which is amazing because you have lots of space, so I would book that if you can, but it also means that your bags might not be right ahead of you because there's usually stuff there, so you might be a few rows back. So make sure everything's packed in a way that you can grab it and access it really easily, just in case there's a poo explosion, you need to change them or you need to grab formula or bottles. Make sure everything's grabbable. Speaking of milk and formula, you are not limited by the liquid allowance, liquid limit, whatever they call it, which is really handy because I was worried about that, but take as much as you want. I don't know if they test every single time. We actually ended up not taking any milk through. I pumped when I got there and we actually used all the milk out there rather than bringing any of it back. So allow yourself that little bit more time just in case. If there are still bits that you need to get, somewhere like Boots, you can order in advance and do click and collect when you get to the airport once you're through the check-in. Obviously make sure that you've got enough hand luggage space for you to be able to pick up what you've ordered, but it's just a really handy way of not having to kind of pack everything, and also make sure that you've got everything, so if you do run out of time, you can order stuff in. I'm sure there will be other equivalent shops in other countries, but in the UK, Boots is one that definitely does it. Another really cool thing is that there are companies where you can hire baby equipment, and you can either pick them up at the airport or get them delivered to your hotel, which is kind of amazing, or wherever you're staying if you're not staying in a hotel, which is kind of amazing. Most companies do it per day. There might be like a sort of minimum spend and then a per day charge, but actually it works out really, really cheap. It was definitely cheaper for us to rent and borrow the pushchair than it would have been for us to buy the pushchair, but we knew we needed a fold down pushchair, which is why we bought one in the end. But there are so many things that you can actually hire that you could virtually go without any baby stuff and be happy when you're out there. But for us, because it was our first trip, we just wanted to know that we had everything covered, so we didn't hire in the end. But if we had, I think we would have got it delivered to us, just to cut out all the faff and all the hassle, and then they can pick it up later as well, and you can just wash your hands of it and walk away. We phoned everywhere that we were going to be in advance to let them know that we were coming with a 3-month-old and asking them if they could put a travel cot in the room. They obviously have an upper limit of how many travel cots they have in the whole premises, but as long as you tell them in advance that you're coming, they will get it sorted out for you, and we just made sure that we had it in email, had it in writing. And it was really lovely to be able to turn up and just have the travel cot there in the room, ready to go. This is a really obvious one, but if you are breastfeeding, make sure you're wearing something easy for you to breastfeed in, because you just don't know when it's going to happen, because your routine's going to be out of the window. So for me, the first time I had to feed her was in the check-in queue in the airport, and I had to get out of the queue. I left my husband there and I went and found a seat and fed her there, which was super easy, and then came back to the queue. Luckily the queue hadn't moved quickly enough for me to just get back in the queue, and then I was able to go straight to the front. But I did sacrifice a little bit of my own comfort so that I could wear something that was going to be easy for her to breastfeed in. Most of the tops that I wear are breastfeeding tops, but you know, some are just easier to use than others, so have a think about which one you're going to wear to the airport, because you might do a random surprise feed. If you do a surprise feed in something that you're not thinking about, I had to do one earlier in this top and I completely forgot. I don't usually breastfeed in this one. It's not for breastfeeding. It was a pregnancy dress and I got confused and I couldn't pull this down. If you have a long jumper, tie your sleeves up, put it over your head, and then suddenly you've got a little makeshift cover, because I literally had to take my top off to breastfeed earlier, and you know, I'm all about getting it out, but I would have been completely naked, so luckily I had that in mind. Despite the fact there are a million more things to think about, it's actually much easier travelling with a baby than you would think. You just need to pack everything in advance and just research a little bit more and sort of figure out how you want to travel. The main thing I would say is in the airport, leave yourself so much more time than you think. We usually allow ourselves 2 hours once we're at the airport before we need to board the flight. And usually that's enough time because we can get in, get through security, we can do any shopping that we need to, we can eat any food that we want to, we can have a nice relaxed chill out, and then we can go towards the gate. But with a baby, the time just goes. I don't know how. I think it's just having a slower check-in because you have the baby and having to change her, having to feed her, just things that you wouldn't normally factor in, you have to do. And when you have a baby strapped to you, you don't really want to be running through the airport. So I sent my husband ahead. And there was definitely a time when he was running and I just couldn't see him anymore. But I assumed he'd hold the plane up if needs be, and luckily there was no need for that to happen. Thank you so much for sticking with me until the very, very end. If you have any more travel tips, please let me know, and I'm sure I'll be back with another video when she's a little bit older, because I'm sure that's going to be completely different.